I want to introduce to you Dr. Ray Strand. Dr. Strand is approaching 80 years old. He's been in the medical field now for 40 plus years. And he's one of those unique doctors that about a decade into his medical practice kind of stepped out of his box and did a massive amount of research on the nutrition world, on the things that we should or should not put in our body. And he discovered what's called oxidative stress, basically how we almost can rot from within. So, what he's going to do for us now over the next 30 minutes is explain to us things we shouldn't eat, things we should eat, and then how to supplement with the right quality products to really prevent some of this oxidative stress going on and give ourselves the best chance for longevity and health. Dr. Ray Strand, take it away.
Well, thank you. I hope I can share my screen here and hopefully everybody can see that. Thank you for having me, Todd. I'm looking forward to this. This is a presentation about kind of my journey in all of this, because I have found that I was a typical physician, trained traditionally, and I did everything I could to keep my patients off supplements. I think they didn't do any good. There wasn't any health benefits. And that's what I taught my patients for over 20 years in my medical practice. I always told my patients that it only created expensive urine by taking supplements, that it was a waste of money, time, and effort. So people who know my story, I have a conversion because of my wife's health benefit when she started taking nutritional supplements. But I want to share my journey and my conversion, because once I saw her health improve by taking high quality nutritional supplements, I had to question my own position, because I had been sharing with my patients not to take them. And so, was there a health benefit my patients could receive by taking high quality, complete, and balanced nutritional supplements? And so, what I found was the fact that I looked at what physicians did, and what we did is we really attempt to attack disease with our drugs. I was drug oriented. I was disease oriented, but I look back, and in the 1940s and 1950s, the discovery of antibiotics kind of changed medicine. That was sulfa and penicillin, which allowed physicians to attack infectious disease. At that time, infectious disease was the number one cause of death in our country. And all of a sudden, we totally changed that around. And infectious disease declined, the number of cases to cause of death, and it was replaced by what we refer to as chronic degenerative diseases. But Big Pharma, having success with infectious disease, carried over this attack approach in treating infectious disease to treating chronic degenerative disease. And I hope this makes sense to you, because this is what they did. However, drugs are not benign. The medications we used is actually the third leading cause of death in the US and in Canada. There are over 100,000 deaths each and every year for properly prescribed and properly taken prescription medications due to their adverse effects. There are over 80,000 deaths due to improperly taken prescriptions and drugs. Now, this means that prescription medication, the adverse reactions, is responsible for over 180,000 deaths each and every year in the US, which makes them the third leading cause of death behind coronary artery disease and cancer. However, you'll never see this on a death certificate. We just don't appreciate it. But this is the medical literature. And I studied this, and I wrote a book called Death by Prescription back in 2002, released, and by HarperCollins. And then I've written another book, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know About Nutritional Medicine. These are both available on Amazon. But it's important to know that taking medication is not benign. And so I really took a stance that, we should be really looking at trying to use medication as a last resort, not a first choice, because of all this, and that lifestyles and becoming proactive and protecting your health is what's key. So let me define chronic degenerative diseases, because a lot of people get confused with this. But these are diseases that occur as we get older: heart disease, cancer, diabetes, stroke, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, rheumatoid, macular degeneration, and so on. But it does not include what I call genetic diseases like cystic fibrosis or cerebral palsy, or that. These are genetic diseases. I'm talking about chronic degenerative diseases. Now, in my medical practice, 90% of my time is spent treating these chronic degenerative diseases. That's what I do. That's day in and day out. And so my patients would love to know how to avoid these diseases. What can I do? And that is something that is just very important that we really watch and look at. So here's what I want you to understand. Oxygen is necessary for life. As we utilize oxygen within the furnace of the cell to create energy and life itself, we also create what I call a cellular exhaust, which is a charged oxygen molecule called a free radical. In other words, a free radical has at least one unpaired electron in its outer orbit, which gives it a very rapid movement, electrical charge. And this rapid movement can go on and damage the cell wall, artery lining, fats, proteins, even the DNA nucleus of the cell. Now, this is something that we call now oxidative stress. And so you have to understand that we need oxygen for life itself, but it's inherently dangerous for our existence. And I'm going to explain how this affects our health, because the medical literature that I studied over the last, 30 years now clearly shows that this process called oxidative stress is the root cause of more than 200 of these chronic degenerative diseases: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. When I started to study this, I would go in to PubMed and I would search, the worldwide medical literature, and I'll just put in rheumatoid arthritis and oxidative stress. And I would get 400 or 500 clinical trials documenting the fact that rheumatoid arthritis, the root cause, was oxidative stress. So this was kind of something I'd never learned in medical school. I mean, we knew diseases, we knew our drugs, I know how to treat them, but I didn't understand this. We hear a lot of people saying, well, it's really inflammation that causes this problem. But see, here's the trouble. Oxidative stress is the root cause because of this rapid movement of these excessive free radicals. It can actually cause cellular damage to the lining of our artery, to the joint space, all of this. And then the body wants to come along and heal it. So it sets off an immune response, which is the inflammation part that you see. So that's a secondary effect. So you have to understand that we, and the number of free radicals you and I have to deal with each and every day, is not steady. There are many things that increase the number of free radicals you and I have to treat. For example, sunlight, radiation. Cigarette smoke is one of the greatest causes of excessive free radicals. And that is why we even see secondary smoke in the medical literature showing damage or increase to health risk. But the pollutants in our air, food, and water are the key. We live in a toxic environment. And the other thing that I really got my attention, there's a Dr. Cooper who coined the term aerobics back in the early 70s, wrote a book, and it was one of the first books I looked at, called The Antioxidant Revolution. And what he did is he coined the term aerobics, and everybody was doing exercise thinking they were going to be the healthiest people in the world. And he actually has his aerobic center down in Dallas. And people would come into him, and he was their guru. And what he found was the fact that, these people who had run many, many marathons, or the triathletes, or this, they were coming in dying prematurely of heart attacks, of strokes, of cancer between the age of 45 and 55. And when he did his medical studies regarding exercise, he found that he used a standard of about 15 miles of exercise within a week. Okay. Now that would be whether you ran it, aerobic activity, swimming, walked it. This was what he did. And that amount of modest exercise, there was a significant health benefit. But everybody said, well, jeepers, if there's a health benefit to that, more is like frosting on the cake. We could do more. And so everybody was coming in, and they're coming in, hey, I've run 20 marathons or 30. But they were dying prematurely. This really upset Dr. Kenneth Cooper. And he said, I got to figure this out. So in his aerobic center, he showed that people who exercise mild to moderately, the number of free radicals they produce just went up a little bit. However, if they over-exercise, the number of free radicals they produce went up exponentially off the graph. And that's what he realized, that, I got to write a book because I have to tell people that over-exercise is actually dangerous for your health. Now, in my medical practice, I didn't have many people who ran 20, 30 marathons, but I had many, many people who had excessive stress. And what I found in the medical literature is the same thing, that mild to moderate stress, the free radical excess goes up a little bit. But if you're under chronic stress or severe stress, the number of free radicals you produce go up off the wall. And so it's important to know that this is something that we deal with, and you've got to realize all of this stuff adds to where we are. So there is actually a war that is waging within every cell in our body. But because of our polluted environment, our stressful lifestyles, our over-medicated society, we must now deal with more free radicals than any generation that's ever walked the face of this earth. And so this is what got my attention in regards to taking nutritional supplements and antioxidants, which were the answer to oxidative stress. And it's not that our food quality went down, which it did. It's not because of all this. It's because of this that we are dealing with more excessive free radicals, and this was damaging us. And to make it simple, you and I are just rusting inside. The same process that causes a cut apple to turn brown or rust metal is literally rusting you and I inside. And this is what is known as oxidative stress. This is what's happening. This is going on inside each of us. So, but we are not defenseless against this process. Antioxidants have the ability to give that free radical the electron that it needs to neutralize it and render it harmless. So here is the key that I learned in my practice now that I'm doing preventive medicine and nutritional medicine. Balance is the key. This is something you want to write down. You must have more antioxidants and their supporting nutrients available to neutralize the number of free radicals you produce in order to prevent or bring oxidative stress back under control. This has been my principle in helping my patients protect their health. This is the key. And so I'm going to share how this all works. But you need an army to fight this war that's raging within your body. Now, your body actually has a natural antioxidant defense system. It's natural. From the food we get, we actually make antioxidants. There's three main systems. You don't have to remember, it's not going to be a test, but just so you know, it's superoxide dismutase, catalase, and perioxidase antioxidant systems. But this isn't enough to win the war within. So we have to get some antioxidants from our food. And it's mainly in our fruits and our vegetables. Now, I don't want anybody to be supplementing a bad diet, a poor diet. We need to be supplementing a healthy diet. And that's why if you hear nothing else and you go out and you eat those 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables each and every day that is recommended, you significantly decrease your risk of all these chronic degenerative diseases. There are all kinds of studies that show that. However, now that we can supplement these antioxidants along with their supporting nutrients, we can get these antioxidants at levels you can't obtain from your food. And that's what I'd like you to understand. So to make this a little clearer, I like the example of a wood fireplace. Now, I live in South Dakota. It's usually cold here. We've had a real warm winter, but I heat my whole house with wood, or at least I can, if I'm not too lazy. But you watch a wood fireplace burn, and normally it burns fine 90-95% of the time. But then occasionally there's a spark and out comes a hot cinder and burns a little hole in your carpet. Well, that's not a big deal, but month after month, year after year, you got a pretty ratty carpet in front of your fireplace. So you look at the fireplace as the furnace is like the furnace of your cell. And the spark or the hot cinder is the free radical, and the carpet is your body. So what happens is what part of the body wears out first is most likely the chronic disease you're going to develop. If it's the brain, it could be Alzheimer's, dementia, or Parkinson's. If it's your eyes, it could be macular degeneration or cataracts. If it's your arteries, you could have a heart attack or stroke. If it's your joint space, you could have arthritis. If it's your bowel, you could develop Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. But the list goes on and on. However, we are not defenseless against this process because the glass doors of the fine wire mesh that you can put in front of the fireplace are like the antioxidants and their supporting nutrients. Yes, the sparks are going to fly. However, your carpet, your body is protected. That's what we're really sharing with you this morning. Now, you have to understand chronic disease is silent. Chronic degenerative diseases are the result of very small changes, these little damages by this oxidative stress that occur over decades. You do not feel anything. And I like people to realize disease is silent. But so what you have to understand is that you can intervene. Even since this takes such a long time, it gives you and I an opportunity. I don't care if you're even my age, it is worth starting taking nutritional supplements and fighting this process. Because if you're not proactively trying to protect your health, you are slowly losing your health. This is what I teach my patients, because we just diagnose disease late. Now, I want to share with you some diseases and share with you a little different angle than you're going to hear from Big Pharma. The first thing I wrote in my book, What Your Doctor Doesn't Know, a whole chapter, heart disease, when you look at the medical literature, is not a disease of too much cholesterol in your bloodstream. And in fact, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, the British Lancet, you go on, state very clearly in study after study, heart disease is an inflammatory disease and not a disease of too much cholesterol in your bloodstream. Half the people who suffer a heart attack actually have normal cholesterol levels, and half have high cholesterol. The thing is, there's no correlation. It is the result of low-grade chronic inflammation of your arteries. So you'll say to yourself, well, what causes the inflammation? Well, one of the greatest causes is cigarette smoke. We know that. This is something our smokers are at high risk of heart disease. But the other thing that we talk about, and the next time I talk to you will be about insulin resistance and diabetes. But when you become less sensitive to your own insulin, your body gets out of balance hormonally. This creates inflammation of your arteries. Even having a high glycemic meal, eating too much sugar or high glycemic food, and you spike your blood sugar, that'll set off inflammation of your arteries and put them in spasm. They've shown studies for 4 to 6 hours after that meal. If you become diabetic and have insulin resistance, that elevated blood sugar causes significant inflammation of your artery. You'll see here oxidized LDL cholesterol. Well, you say cholesterol is not there. LDL cholesterol is normal. It's something we need. It only becomes inflammatory once it's been oxidized by these excessive free radicals. High blood pressure. There's another thing called elevated homocysteine, which is related to a B vitamin deficiency. Oxidized LDL cholesterol is neutralized by vitamin E and alpha lipoic acid. We can control diabetes and insulin resistance. It's a choice. You just have to develop healthy lifestyles, which I'll share again. And obviously, we can quit smoking. So, really, nutritional supplementation pretty much can settle down all these causes of inflammation and significantly decrease your risk of having a heart attack or stroke. Now let's look at cancer. Cancers, all researchers agree, take decades to develop. The root cause and the leading theory of cancer is oxidative stress, even though there are other theories. Okay, but oxidative stress is the is the most positive cause or theory for the cause of cancer. Now, patients, large group studies show that the higher levels of antioxidants in the bloodstream of people significantly decrease your risk of developing cancer. And it's shown over and over in these studies. Other studies actually show that taking antioxidants in supplementation can reverse precancerous lesions back to normal 60 to 70% of the time. You also have to realize nutritional supplementation, as I promote, optimizes your body's natural immune system, which is your great protector. And we all know we have to have those T4 killer cells and T8 killer cells, which actually go around and destroy early cancers. It's the healing aspect. Here's a nice little chart that I have used. And what we find is that you can see here carcinogenesis. This is the development of cancer, and that's the upper line. You take a normal cell here, and what happens is, and they've shown this in the medical literature, you have excessive free radicals. There is damage to the DNA, the spiral staircase. And the medical literature shows they not only know it destroys areas of the spiral staircase, they know exactly which areas are damaged the most. Well, when that cell replicates, it becomes a mutated cell, and that mutation continues. Then there's more free radical damage, and then it becomes over years a pre-malignant or precancerous lesion. Then there's more free radical damage, and it actually becomes a cancer. Now, when they do medical studies, they take these precancerous lesions that are on the surface, like cervical dysplasia. That's why we can see that easily, because we do a lot of pap smears, or people who chew tobacco, they get leukoplakia in their mouth, but they're on the surface. And they have done studies showing these people, they give them higher dose antioxidants, and then they watch them because they can. And what they find is there's regression. It's called chemoprevention. There's actually a natural regression or healing, and it goes the other way. And there's DNA repair, and 60% to 70% in some of these studies show precancerous lesions going all the way back to normal cells. So there's a concept now called chemoprevention. And the greatest chemopreventive approach is taking nutritional supplements. Why? Because if you have enough antioxidants on board to prevent free radical damage, the normal cell stays normal. And we know that the body can heal itself. So even if it's mutated, there is DNA repair, which requires all of these antioxidants and nutritional supplements. So there's inhibition, there's regression and repair. Nutritional supplements safe. You can take it for a lifetime. This is why you need to understand that taking nutritional supplements significantly can reduce your risk of having having cancer. Now, the other one my patients are always concerned about is Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's disease. Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to get to this, is that we as physicians diagnose disease in the very last stages. And the day I diagnose someone in my medical practice who has Alzheimer's, dementia, or Parkinson's, the medical literature shows me 80% of the brain cells involved in these diseases are already destroyed at the day I make the diagnosis. Therefore, prevention is the key with these diseases. And the medical literature shows the higher levels of antioxidants, essential fats, vitamin D, all of these significantly decrease your risk of developing these diseases. And therefore, we know that this is true. So that is what we're talking about. So I want to highlight this. We as physicians diagnose disease in their very last stages. The first sign of heart disease, over 60% of the time, is either sudden death or a heart attack. My patients are fine. They feel great. They have no problem. Then they just start grabbing their chest and it's over for many of them. Most of them can't make the hospital. And I said, all researchers agree that cancers develop over decades. Patients, they develop the symptoms at the very last stages. You take pancreatic cancer. By the time we diagnose or someone has discomfort from pancreatic cancer, it's already spread. It's stage 4. They hardly have a chance to live 6 months. Brain tumors like glioblastoma, they last 12 to 14 months. We've all seen this. Oh, he's filled with cancer. He's this. And they didn't have any symptoms. I can't believe it. This is why prevention is so important. The day we diagnose, as I said earlier, patients with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, 80% of those brain cells are already destroyed. Therefore, we need to understand what we are doing and how we can prevent this. Now, as a physician, I was taught in medical school that all we needed were RDA levels of nutrition, recommended dietary allowance. Well, I looked at this in my first book that I wrote, and I wondered, well, how did RDAs develop? Well, they were developed in the late 1930s, early 1940s, during the Second World War, as the minimal amount needed to avoid what we call acute deficiency diseases, pellagra, scurvy, or rickets. RDAs had nothing to do with chronic degenerative diseases. So when I started to study the medical literature in regards to the health benefits my patients could receive by taking nutritional supplements, there came a new talk, and it's called optimal or advanced levels of nutritional supplements. And those levels that are needed to provide a health benefit against developing these chronic degenerative diseases. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. Vitamin E, the RDA is 30 international units. But when you study the medical literature, you don't even begin to see a health benefit to get over 100 IUs of vitamin E. And it gets better until you get around 400 IUs. Everybody kind of tends to agree that's the optimal level of intake of vitamin E. And I've been telling my patients, well, you don't need to take supplements. You can just get everything you want by eating a healthy diet. But I was basing that on RDAs. So when I realized this, well, how much do you have to eat to get in 400 IUs of vitamin E? You only need to get in 33 heads of spinach or 27 pounds of butter or 5 pounds of wheat germ each and every day to get that level. Another example is vitamin C. The RDA is 60 milligrams. Well, you don't see a health benefit, you get over 1,000, and getting up towards 2,000 is best. Well, how much do you have to eat to get that? Well, 18 large oranges or 80 avocados. Well, look, folks, you can't take that much. There's no way my patients could eat that. The only way you can achieve this is by taking nutritional supplementation. So here was my concern. I had to look at the medical evidence, and people who know me, I really was totally against supplementation. So the medical evidence that demands a verdict. Should you be taking nutritional supplements? Should I be recommending to my patients to take nutritional supplements? What I learned through all of this is key, that our own body is the best defense against this process of oxidative stress or developing any of these chronic degenerative diseases, and not the drugs I can prescribe. In fact, the drugs I prescribe actually increases oxidative stress, especially chemotherapeutic drugs, radiation, all of that. However, the best way to optimize our body's natural defense systems is by consuming high quality, complete and balanced nutritional supplements as part of a healthy lifestyle. It's not something you do today or tomorrow. It is got to be part of a healthy lifestyle because we want to prevent this process. So I recommend all my patients consume what I refer to as cellular nutrition. Now, I define cellular nutrition as providing all of these essential nutrients to the cells at optimal or advanced levels, not RDA levels. That's in a one a day. What I recommend you can't get in a one a day. But these have been shown to provide a health benefit in our medical literature. And what I found is we study nutritional nutrients like we do drugs. We'll study vitamin E, then we'll study vitamin D, and then magnesium, and then selenium, and then maybe vitamin C. We study these one at a time. That's how we do it. The most amazing thing to me, even though we're studying just one nutrient, about 85+% of these studies, now taken obviously at the optimal levels, showed a health benefit. And there was a health benefit to taking vitamin C, a tremendous health benefit for taking vitamin D and getting your vitamin D levels up there. I don't have time to get into it, but they're tremendous. For example, if you're taking 2,000 IUs of vitamin D, you decrease every viral infection by 75%, including COVID. You decrease your risk of all cancers by about 60 to 70%, and the list goes on and on. Well, when I looked at this, I want my patients to get all these benefits. I don't want them just to go out and get vitamin C or vitamin E. So the cellular nutrition is what I recommend, is all the essential nutrients at their optimal levels. Then you create a concept and something we call synergy. See, you're not just taking one nutrient at a time. You're taking a superfood when you take cellular nutrition. Now, antioxidants work against different free radicals in different parts of the body. Vitamin E is your best antioxidant within the cell membrane. Vitamin C is the best antioxidant within the plasma. Glutathione is the absolute best antioxidant within the cell. But all these antioxidants need the B cofactors, B6, 2, 12, folic acid to do their job. They also need the so-called antioxidant minerals, selenium, magnesium, copper, zinc, to do their job. You can have all the glutathione in the world, but if you don't have enough selenium, it doesn't work at its optimal level. So I want my patients to have all of this. And what I find is that they work together. And so the thing is, you're fighting different free radicals in different parts of the body, but vitamin C actually replenishes the vitamin E, so it can be used over and over and over again. Alpha lipoic acid replenishes the vitamin E and also the intracellular glutathione. So it can be used over and over again. So 1 + 1 is not 2, it's 20, it's 30, it's 40. And remember, balance is the key. And so I want their B cofactors to be there, their minerals to be there. So that's why I recommend cellular nutrition. And what we find is we'll get into that, but I want you to understand the concepts. But this is what we need. So balance is the key. Okay, you want to have more antioxidants and their supporting nutrients available than the number of free radicals you produce so that you can prevent oxidative stress or bring oxidative stress back under control. Now, I'm going to use a simple example. I can almost now, every time a patient comes into me, I can almost see they have oxidative stress. They have a poor color, an ashen color. I can see it. And every time I see that, I get worried about those patients. I tend to listen much more carefully to their complaints or symptoms. But if I can get them to start cellular nutrition, taking nutritional supplements every day, if I see them back in a month or two, they totally change. I can see their color. And you're going to see this out too, just in yourself or people you have that get on nutritional supplements, you can see it. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so there are health benefits. This is what I want you to know of cellular nutrition. Nutritional supplementation is about health, not disease. I know I've talked about disease this entire Zoom call, but I'm really talking about the health benefits of taking nutritional supplementation, because the medical literature shows that it optimizes our natural antioxidant defense system. But those same cellular nutrition optimizes our body's natural immune system, our great protector. But it also optimizes our natural repair system, as I showed in the cancer slides. So this is what we are accomplishing. Your body is the best defense against this process. It's not the drugs. We run to the doctor, we want to be on these drugs. It's not, it's protecting it. So what it is, it's much easier to protect your health than it is to try to regain your health after you've lost it. Now, in my medical practice, I have most of my patients coming in have lost their health, and I'm adding optimizers to the nutritional supplement. I'm trying, because they have more oxidative stress. That, my patients with MS or rheumatoid or Crohn's disease, they have more oxidative stress than the normal patient. So I know that to win this war within, you must be taking high quality, complete, and balanced nutritional supplements as part of a healthy lifestyle. So what I want to share with you is that, when I started to recommend, I've always recommended a healthy diet. And I've always recommended a modest, consistent exercise program to my patients, but I always tried to keep my patients off taking supplements. So when I started to recommend nutritional supplements to my patients, it kind of upset some of my peers, some of my other doctor friends. They would come into me and say, "Ray, why are you recommending supplements to your patients?" Well, I'd always ask them a question to that question. I'd say, "Well, have you ever recommended exercise to your patients?" "Well, yes, of course." Well, I says, "Well, what are you doing? What do you base that on?" "Well, I base that on the medical literature." And they say, "Well, I believe my patients who have a consistent, modest exercise program have a health benefit over those that don't." And I says, "Well, then when you recommend exercise to your patients, are you treating a disease?" Of course, they sit back and they say, "No, no, no, I'm not treating a disease." I could say the same thing about eating a healthy diet, those good low glycemic whole foods, carbohydrates, good fats, good proteins. There's a tremendous health benefit for doing that. But now I say, well, that's how I feel about nutritional supplements. I feel there's a health benefit for those individuals, my patients, who choose to consume high quality, complete and balanced nutritional supplements as part of a healthy lifestyle. And for those who have not heard me before, I recommend PartnerCo nutritional products. And I have a whole process of doing this. I kind of shared some of that in my last Zoom I did here about 10 days ago with Todd's group. And you can go back and look at that to kind of know where I am. But, it's on the basis, I like the optimals and or MOA, noni, as the basis of cellular nutrition. If you are concerned about osteoporosis and that, you add the Magna-Cal D. If you're not getting enough omega-3 fats, which is very, very important to keep down inflammation in this, I recommend omega-Q, but that's part of of what I call cellular nutrition. When my patients come in and they are suffering and they're trying to regain their health, I have to give them more antioxidants, but add it to the cellular nutrition, like Vanali. I use Vanali because it's 50 times more potent than vitamin C and 50 times more potent than vitamin E, and it helps me bring oxidative stress back. I use BioPro Q. There are many, many other things. We can talk about detox, which we're going to be talking about, which you eliminate some of these heavy metals, which are the toxins we talk about in our environment, to decrease the number of free radicals we have to produce. But in the end, nutritional supplementation is about health. It's not about disease. And so everyone on this Zoom call, you've got to consider eating that healthy diet, because we don't want to supplement a poor diet. You want to have a healthy, consistent, moderate exercise program. We don't want to overexercise. And if you are an athlete and you're running marathons, you got to take more antioxidants and that to balance it. But there is also a health benefit. And that's what this whole thing is about. For those individuals who choose to consume high quality, complete, and balanced nutritional supplements as part of a healthy lifestyle. It's not something you do for a month and say, oh, it didn't help me. It needs to go along with this. And this is where you guys and everybody needs to know where we are. So what I'm going to do is stop my share and turn this back. Thank you very much.